guys, what's up? It's Matt. It's the RYLA Routine. I'm here with the amazing Cade White. Cade, what's up, man?
What's going on?
Hey, cool thing about Cade. Cade and I we were talking like, hey, want to get you on the RYLA Routine. He's like, well, I'm in Las Vegas. We'll eventually get to what I think is awesome. I think Cade needs to talk about what he does professionally because like it's just so cool. Because I work at the YMCA and Cade flies and literally like is flying airplanes and like I knew Cade was smart, but it's awesome to know who we put our hands in. Life in the hands of people like Cade. So we'll get to that. But Cade, we're gonna jump right into it. Muskogee, Oklahoma, man. Tell us how you found out about RYLA.
So, like most other campers, I didn't really find out what it was. I just knew the word RYLA and knew that I was going to some camp on my fall break of my junior year of high school. And Renee, who's a member of the Muskogee Rotary Club, was really big into RYLA and still is. And she coaxed my parents to kind of nudge me to go do it. And I was like, all right, well, I'll go do it. Um, that's pretty much the beginning of it. It wasn't anything that I heard on the outside or heard through school. I know there was another kid that I went with from Muskogee High School, and he was
Gotcha.
very cool as well.
Well, I
But
tell you, what's interesting about Muskogee. Some from Okmulgee. People that aren't from Oklahoma don't know that. I mean, we're Okmulgee to Muskogee is probably a 30-minute trip.
mm-hmm,
But what I remember about the very first year that I had the opportunity to lead camp was two guys from Muskogee, a guy named Dell Ford and a guy named Cameron, and two guys that were athletes, and both of them were just a hoot. And really, Renee, that's really kind of the group that I feel like got Muskogee in at a little higher level. Um, and really, because I think they went back and kind of nudged Renee to say, hey, we can do more. Um, but I think you bring up what's now, just such a valid point is there's a Rotarian that's having a conversation with school and school
mm-hmm.
tries to find a camper. Um, so you get to camp and there's two kids from Muskogee. What was your camper year like? What was that experience like? If I remember right, it was 2018, right?
Yeah. Um, so I mean, like most others, I was nervous. I'm not a super big extrovert, and I still am not. I'm a little bit of both, but it definitely got my gears cranking in my head when I had to go through the archway of all those people and was like, what did I get myself into? And um, the way I really liked camp that year is it seemed like it was longer than 4 days. Like when I looked at the last day and then looked at the first day, it seemed like
Yeah.
a much larger span of time. And I think that's just due to all the connections and all the growth that happens in those few days that you're there. That when you look at what your mindset was coming into camp versus how it was outside of camp, it's so different that the time just seems different too. And that's the main thing I learned about camp and how I felt about it. I was nervous through all of it, but the more that I realized I can trust other people and trust my CITs, trust my chief, and get to know them and really just try to connect more than
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with and push that envelope of comfort, then the more I really found a deep connection to RYLA. And I feel like that's kind of what the connection is between any camper because you have campers that are willing to push that envelope of getting out of the comfort
Right.
zone, and then you have some that they're not ready to make that jump, and that's 100% fine. But like you have mentioned to other people on this, the morning routine is like it's not for everyone,
Yeah.
and that's fine. Like it's if it's not for you, it's not for you. That it is what it is. But we're still going to make sure you have a good time and feel loved.
Yeah. You mentioned something there. So you started at the arch coming in, and then you got to a point of like I haven't really had the opportunity to dive into challenge by choice with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I look at like my background in the Y. Uh, Really early on, I facilitated a lot of high ropes and low ropes through our ropes courses at the Y. And one of the earliest things people taught through training was challenge by choice. And I think that whether we push pull however you want to look at it, like what's what's the concept of challenge by choice mean to you, like as a leader, because you've got this experience now where you've went as a camper, and I don't think we make anybody do anything. I mean, we try to again, push or pull,
Yeah.
however you want to look at it. We try to, ask, hey, I don't want to go over the wall. Okay, well then will you help the whole tribe get over? And then by the way, I'm still going to ask you to go over the wall. Um,
Mhm.
what's what's the concept of challenge by choice mean to you?
For me, I think it means pushing my envelope and taking one more step into the lake and just getting a little bit deeper with how I perceive certain fears and anxieties. Like there's a lot of challenges that I'm, very confident at, like the high ropes, low ropes, all that type of stuff. Like when I was a camper, I'm not afraid of stuff like that. But there's other things that year, like Lego communication and more of the in-depth communication type activities that I wasn't super comfortable with. I don't like inserting myself into a situation when I'd rather kind of step back and, I say I'm a fire, but at the end of the day, I hate butting in and giving my
Yeah.
2 cents on something. Like that's just how it is. And after my camper year, I kind of realized that, to be able to take it a step farther, I have to make myself uncomfortable and add myself into that situation because, if everyone adopted the same mentality that I have, then nothing is going to get done. So it's better that you have, an extra brain in the midst trying to help solve the problem than, not making myself available to be used or to accomplish what needs to be done.
When you look at, I understand Muskogee. So Muskogee High School is a 6A high school, and in a town that, um, you've got a pretty good graduating class. I mean, what was your graduating class?
I want to say around 500 to 600. I could be wrong.
Yeah, so when you think about that number, that number seems correct. When you think about that number of kids in a graduating class, and here's Cade as a high school junior, um, I'm making some assumptions. Again, I'm 41 years old, right? So I make some
Mhm.
assumptions. Like I went to a high school where I graduated with 120, and I was also, you know, I was everything baseball, and like I couldn't fly under the radar, and like if I tried, because the number, it was just a numbers thing. But when you're in a class size of 500, um, how do you think? I mean, do you think challenge by choice exists? Do you think like in a high school that size, like there's people that are looking to like? It seems like it'd be a challenge to like draw that out of people. Like that's where I think I'd go. Like everybody needs RYLA because in a school like Muskogee, you just can't get to that depth.
Yeah, I'd say the one way that you could is by different things that you do in school. So I was a part of the golf team, and I was also a part of the advanced corral there. And so when you break it down into events, clubs, classes that are uh, anywhere from 5 people, like on the golf team, to 30 people, like in the choir,
Yeah,
and then like say choir, like I was in the bass section, so then you have 5 to 10 guys that you kind of have in your circle. You can kind of start to dig into those connections and really challenge yourself to strive to communicate better with them and make a more open environment. Did I take that immediately out of RYLA after high school? Probably not. I definitely had a different change, but um, I was kind of like a slow cook when it come to RYLA. I definitely felt a different impact and a change and a different perception on the end of camp. But that I just go out and completely change and be an extrovert and
yeah.
be this social butterfly. No, I didn't. But um, at the end of the day, I guess that would be how I would say challenge by choice could be accepted in a school that big.
Yeah.
It's just breaking it down into smaller groups, or like in the hallway interactions. Like let's go, yeah, it's a big school, but you have interactions with people that you've never met before, and um, the best you can do. And I mean, I did take this from Brett Bruff, my camper year, and I still do it to this day. Is when someone asks how you're doing, just say awesome or some other word besides good,
Yeah.
and sound interested when you say how about you, how are you doing.
When
So
you
I'm go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go
No,
ahead.
I guess on the smallest level, you can spark um, happiness or a change in someone's mindset for how they're doing that day because you don't know what's going on in someone's day or their head or even their life. So I guess it counts the small interactions that you have with people too, even
So
if you
now
don't know everyone.
you look at, going, so you go from Muskogee and um in 18, you're junior, and so here we are, just finished two camps in 23. You came back for both camps in 23, and really supported and elevated camp there. Like, when you make that transition, I asked this question over the past couple weeks with people. When you make this transition from a camper to a CIT to a chief, like, talk about that transition. Like, talk about those roles maybe. What's camp like? The camp experience as a kid, as a camper, is obviously different than when all of a sudden. I joke,
Yeah.
like, I use the word Wizard of Oz, like when we pull the curtain back and you go, oh, that's how all those pieces come together. Like, talk a little bit about that path.
Um, my CIT year was definitely my roughest year because, like you said, you don't really know what all's going on behind the scenes or any of the magic that's going on behind that curtain. But um, just getting out of that mode of, I guess, the expectation bias of what camp was to you, and now changing it into something different, and then also dealing with, I mean, I don't know if everyone has this, but I definitely had a little bit of intimidation being a CIT, given that I'm only a year older than the campers.
Sure.
And so there was some like mental hurdles that I had to get over. I think I had three CI. It was me and two other girls that were CITs that year, and it was it was a different experience as compared to in 2023, where it was like two chiefs or one chief and one CIT.
Yeah.
Um, it was all just it was a decent sized challenge for me to wrap my head around that. But the more I, even after my CIT year of RYLA, got out into the professional world and just farthered those communication skills and kind of like understanding how other people communicate and what their element is, and really honing that skill, has it been comfortable to like come back and be a chief
Gotcha.
and take on that leadership role. And now my stance is I try to be as hands off as I can. Speak when
Right.
I can, but let the CIT do it and let them get the most experience out of it, because that's where I needed it the most, was my CIT year.
Yeah. I think that's one of the first conversations we have at camp, especially with the CITs, is more around the stance of like, it's not about you, but it is about you. And it will be, right? You can still grow at camp, but like, the
Mm-hmm.
wall's not about you. The high ropes isn't about you. You'll get there. But we need you to take away something different from camp. And
Mm-hmm.
what you need to take away from camp is the understanding of exactly what you just mentioned there, is like, okay, now, as intimidating as it may be, these kids are 1 year old. I'm 1 year older than these guys. The real advantage is I have the playbook. If I stop and pause and know that the playbook is there, like, this is how, mission vision, all of that, all of
Mm-hmm.
those things I have in my toolbox that I didn't have a year ago. And then as a chief, you come back and you have that other year as a CIT, or so hopefully somebody like Cade handed you the steering wheel and said, hey, I'm here, I won't let you drive off the road, but I do want you to take this and run with it. And I'll be honest with you, I did see that here in October. I saw that from you a lot in October. And remarkably, having a tribe that had you and a CIT that went really well.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about professionally, and we'll jump back to RYLA, but professionally, you talked about that transition of communication and things like that. Um, I mean, I think that's how we communicate, especially in the professional world, when I'm trying to communicate up, down, and lateral. If you want to look at it in a hierarchical way, like,
Mm-hmm.
I have a supervisor, my supervisor has a supervisor, maybe my I have peers, and then I have people who I need to communicate to help me be successful, that maybe, for better words, are under my position. What's I mean, like, in its simplest form, like, I mean, what's communication mean to you? And not necessarily, you don't have to tout RYLA by any stretch, but like, talk through that communication piece, because you're also, I was joking on the front end, like, I mean, you're a pilot, right? You have an enormous amount of trust that you have to put into mechanical, and then you have people that work at a tower. Like, you're not a one person, you're not a one person job. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, what's that communication mean in your professional career today?
Yeah, communication's everything when it comes to aviation. Um, it's for any singular operation, you could be talking to up to 30 people just for one flight.
Wow.
Um, but in the case of just bare communication, I would say that it just RYLA increases your awareness of how other people communicate, and that has helped me see different behaviors and different patterns in people, and kind of be like, oh, well, they seem like maybe an earth or a wind or a water fire, and then you can kind of not just on the spot once you know what they are, just completely change how you talk to them, but kind of start to slowly adapt and learn to who you're talking to. Um, just making sure that your message gets across is a really big one, and that's something I talk about, to campers that I've had at RYLA both times in 2023. Is be good at communicate, but also make sure what you're saying gets across. Because I could say something to you that a lot of people would understand in my field of work, but you would have
Yeah,
no idea.
sure.
So it's not even just about the quality or the quantity of communication, but the quality. And if it's going to get into their ears and into their brain, and they're going to understand it. On the other side of that talisman, there's the students that I teach, and when you're teaching someone who's never flown or who's never been in aviation at all, you have to really get that message across to them, because at some point they need to be in the same position that you're in as an instructor. And
Right.
so communicating it right the first time and communicating it effectively is probably one of the biggest things that I would, pound on when it comes to teaching campers, because it can be, anywhere from just a make or break to a minor inconvenience, or it could be the cost of your job or someone else's life in
Sure.
my case.
Yeah. What's the when it comes to you're talking through communication, talk a little bit more about RYLA itself. Like you mentioned Lego activity, you mentioned some other stuff. Like what's your favorite activity at camp? Like, and it may be for a multitude of reasons, but like when you look at the camp schedule, what are you like? Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Paracord activity.
Okay,
I
tell me
love the
more.
paracord activity. So it I love it because it teaches you to work the problem. And that's what I kept saying back in October, is to work even though we had you undo a couple knots and stuff,
Right.
if you had to come up, I would have had them just keep going at it. I wouldn't have said anything.
Yeah.
But um, it it's just such an amazing activity, because it really comes down to managing your mind yourself and what you're doing in that moment, because it's really frustrating because you're dealing with all these different inputs and you can't give an output. And so it really comes down to managing your mindset in the situation, and then working the problem and not losing hope during working on something that's difficult. Just because the fire gets hot doesn't mean you can't stop. That's what I loved about it. I was glad that my team came in last, because it taught them a really good lesson at the end. They were all very frustrated, and it was a yeah, it was a great moment.
Well, for
But
sake of conversation, you said, I think it's beneficial for everybody to know, like, we're sitting there looking at that knot, and I'm like, okay, there's no way somebody could tie that knot without letting go. Like it just,
mhm,
and that's what it came down to. And it took a long time for you guys, like for me to walk past there and go, okay, I'm going to help them. But you did. I think it's just keep working that problem. Um, and there's so many things in this world that could be that problem that innovation is a piece of, right? Like
mhm,
let's figure this, but the innovation, if it's the light bulb, Edison wasn't the only person that was responsible for the light bulb. There were components of that light bulb that other people created. There were other iterations and other people that were working the problem. They didn't know the problem was electricity. He was trying to
mhm,
solve electricity, but he had to have all the components. And so if the knot is the problem, it's all that communication, it's all those personalities, it's all those earth, winds, waters, and fires that make that so great. I joked the other day, I spoke at the Broken Arrow Rotary Club probably early December, and I told all of them, like, straight up, when I went through, I took the paracord activity from Leadership Broken Arrow. I went through Leadership Broken Arrow way back in 2012, like honestly before RYLA, and went through it, and I absolutely was a train wreck. I didn't know the people that were in the program. It was like the first day of the program, they were just people that had businesses in Broken Arrow. And as a fire, it was really complicated. But I didn't see it as working the problem. I saw it as I was uncomfortable, and it was my challenge by choice because I didn't like being blindfolded, and I didn't like not being able to see the task.
Yeah.
Working that problem's huge. You know, everybody knows I love the paracord. I love to joke about the paracord activity because it just sucks. I mean, like it's just, it's one of those things where, and just get the suck out of the way. It's going to be bad. Somebody's not going to like it in your tribe. It's going to potentially break somebody, and put somebody in a really difficult spot because they're like me. They don't like not seeing the task at hand, or like feel like they can be a part of the conversation. But it's all those components that make success, and that's 100% that paracord activity for me. And that's what I'm hearing from you. It's just keep working the problem. When you think a little bit about, you talked about, you know, in particular, like in your profession, like you could have 30 plus touches in communication. Um, you know, that's not good. That the paracord activity is the same way. Like it's those components. It's all the things that have to happen. How do you get comfortable with that? How do you get comfortable with having to have that many touches to find success? Because there's absolutely high school kids that go to camp that I think are in it by themselves. They're in it alone, whether that be for a negative reason, or
Mhm.
they're just so gung ho that they're so driven and focused that maybe they don't acknowledge that they could take people along with them. Um, and they're just worried about being the best baseball player, being the best golfer, being the best musician, and they just
Yeah.
keep running at something and they don't bring people with them. Uh, what's your thoughts on that?
I think that just the amount of potential that people have, especially at that age, they don't fully realize. I didn't realize what my potential was until I started, I guess, flexing that uncomfortable muscle, like the paracord activity. It makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah,
But if you do 15 paracord activities at a time, or you do one a week or something like that, eventually you're going to get into the flow of it and realize that, hey, I'm comfortable being here. I'm comfortable not being in control. I can be blindfolded for up to 40 minutes to an hour,
yeah,
and we can solve this knot maybe a little bit faster because we practice communicating this way.
yeah,
That's how it was with me in the professional world. It's definitely uncomfortable talking to someone on a radio for the first time and you realize that there's about 200 other people listening. It's kind of like how, like when you get into public speaking for the first time, you're not going to do great.
yeah.
But the more and more that you flex that uncomfortable muscle, the stronger it's going to get and the more resilient you're going to get through it. Um, so I guess that's how I would say that you can kind of bridge that gap between not, I guess, having to deal with those 30 points of contact to not just having to deal with them, but just that being a part of your flow.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's not something I have to deal with. It's just a part of, you know, the flow that you do. And it's not necessarily a stressful thing. It's just it's another thing. And that's not what I could say at the beginning,
Sure.
but it takes practice.
I love the uncomfortable. You said the uncomfortable muscle because I joke, but yet, and it sounds so counter kind of counterintuitive. It's I tell folks all the time, like as a professional baseball player and as a professional athlete and as a college athlete, I you had to get uncomfortable. You had to get comfortable being uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
because going out and pitching a baseball when all eyes are on you in front of 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people, the game is a game of failure. It's actually not a game of success,
Yeah.
um, in baseball. And you've got all those eyes on you. And really, you've got to be okay with the moment,
Mm-hmm.
like truly immersing yourself in the moment
Yeah.
and taking, if it's pitch by pitch, if it's day by day, score by score in school, you gotta, anything that's hard comes with that. We got to use that muscle. If we
Yeah.
want to be better at something, we got to use that muscle because Michael Jordan's a great example of that. Michael Jordan is cut from his, didn't make his junior high basketball team, and so what did he do? He did more.
Mm-hmm.
He went out and shot more, and he went out and did more. Um, and over time put himself in positions where otherwise he just wouldn't put himself if he just said, I'm supposed to be who I'm supposed to be. But I think that uncomfortable muscle is important. I think what's important also is that it's becoming comfortable by putting yourself in situations that create challenge by choice.
Yeah.
Is what
Exactly.
that's what indeed I can't tell that to an 11-year-old, but putting that in
Yeah.
front of you and I, like, hey, we have to get comfortable being put in positions that are challenge by choice related, where
Mhm.
I really don't want to do that, but I know if I do that, it'll make me better.
Yeah.
If I do that, it'll put me a little bit further down the road. And that's whether that be business, personally, professionally, you name it. It goes back to challenge by choice.
Hmm.
And that's, I think it's so awesome to be able to go back to what we started talking about, to show that challenge by choice piece, because that is the uncomfortable muscle.
Yeah.
And I get out of the car at RYLA and I see this tunnel and the uncomfortable, I got to figure out how I'm going to use this.
Hmm.
I'm just going to go through it and say, okay, we're going to go do it. It's uncomfortable. And then, by the way, you're going to go eat lunch, meet some people you've never met that are going to be excited to see you. And then somebody's going to go say, hey, we're going to do this thing called Ride That Pony. And I don't want to do that. And you got, again, that muscle keeps getting worked. And by the end of the week at camp, I think we've worked that muscle enough to where I become comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I've been put in some situations and conversations where Cade is doing a debrief in a tribe. And I've got to be a little more comfortable with having a conversation. And for some, they don't get there.
Hmm.
But for the majority of kids that come to camp, there's that aha moment at some point. And really what it comes from is challenge by choice. Like the core root of it is challenge by choice. It's Cade asking a question and not pushing that person. But Cade's going to ask another question at some point during the day. He's not just going to keep, like,
Hmm.
we're gonna keep creating those challenge by choice moments and working that uncomfortable muscle. So I love you saying the uncomfortable muscle, because I that's 110% what I think it is. I think that is a secret sauce for RYLA. I think it's a secret sauce for the people that come back and serve, that acknowledge that, on that side of things. But as we wrap up here, I do want to quickly just jump into the fact that, like, you're awesome. For the, you guys can obviously tell Cade's somewhere, but Cade's in Las Vegas. Like, Cade had a private flight where literally he flew somebody out. Um, I think you said you flew them out of Tulsa. They went to Adele last night. They're going to U2 tonight. Then you're flying them back to Tulsa tomorrow. Um,
Yep.
I think that's just awesome. I think it's awesome that you're willing to talk to me while you're in Las Vegas. Like,
Oh yeah.
go
No
do
big deal.
15 different things other than have a conversation about RYLA. But I think that speaks to the person you are. Um, as we wrap this thing up, what define leadership? What's leadership mean to Kate?
I think it just boils down to that uncomfortable muscle, because you can't be a leader and never have been uncomfortable, because a leader is not going to be the person at the back of the line telling everyone else what to do. They're going to be at the front of the line, showing them how to do it and leading them through it. Um, and a leader isn't just someone that, you know, is super extroverted and can really speak out and do all this crazy awesome stuff like Matt or Ron, but just someone who can, really facilitate well with a certain group or their organization or company or school club. Um, I think when it comes down to being a leader, it's truly caring for the people that you're looking after and that you're helping, and being equals with them and really
Yeah.
getting down to the dirt and being uncomfortable and willing to take those steps of the uncomfortable muscle, I guess, and flex your muscle along with them while they get stronger. Your whole point as a leader isn't to be above people, it's to bring them up to where you're at.
I love
That,
it. That
was,
right there, that's where it's at. A lot, right? I mean, it's the elevation. It's finding your replacement. It's trying to it's supporting and helping. Um, and again, none of that comes with that. Growth does not come from a place of comfort. It comes from a place of being uncomfortable. I,
yeah.
as a person that's 41 years old, that's been in the Y for 17 years and has Rotary, Sky took youth wrestling, baseball programs, you name it. Anything where we grew, anything where there was a challenge growth did not occur without pain.
Mhm.
And that may be in time, that may be in conversation, that may be in, operations, but for growth to occur, a diamond becomes a diamond with pressure.
Yeah.
And that is 110% what we're talking about here. And which I think it's awesome. It's awesome timing because of the communication piece as well as the challenge by choice piece and working that muscle. But I do appreciate this time. I know that everything you're saying, that's what I know about Cade. So I hopefully there's people that don't know Cade that get to see this and say, okay, now I know more about that. That makes sense. But you got to work that muscle this week. I think, Cade, myself, I mean, you commit to challenge by choice and you commit to that as a path. And you got to work that. You got to look at others and you got to help push or pull others as well. And, I just couldn't be any more proud of you, brother. I mean, as somebody that's been along for the ride, it's going to stay on the ride with us. It's a Rotarian now as well. Thank you so very much for being you and being awesome.
Appreciate it.
Anything else you got on the table before we move on?
Nope. I would just say go out and flex that uncomfortable muscle as much as you can this week.
Awesome. Thanks, brother. Hey, it's Matt and Cade. We've been with the RYLA Routine. We'll check you back next week. Hope you have an awesome week ahead.